Up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Immersive Podcast. And as always, thank you for being here. First off, I want to shout out our affiliate sponsors, Unified TV, Network for Truth. Guys, I'm sure if you're watching the show, you have seen some of their shorts, some of the interviews Jason Shirka has done with the person known as Ray. He wears a mask, glasses, and hides in the shadows, and talks a lot about things in regard to the TLS network and disclosure and things like that. Unified TV, it's $20 a month, or you can pay for a year for $200 so you save a little bit, and the link is in the bio. Also, a little bit of thanks to, well, a little bit more, wink wink, a little bit of thanks to GFL, Galactic Federation of Light Clothing. They are amazing. They make clothing for light workers. Check out their episode. It's a couple episodes before this one. Dotan and Tavel came on. They're the founders of the company. And they talk all about what's special about their clothing, and it's truly clothing for light workers. Today we have Sarah Zula. She is a subconscious coach. She helps people work with their subconscious and overcome limiting beliefs, things like that, habits, etc. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing today?
Hi, Tyler. And awesome to hear the GFL shout out. They're such fam. I love them so much as well. So awesome to hear that shout out. Soul Tribe coming around. So good to be here. So happy to be here with you.
Yeah. Where are you speaking to me from? I always ask because it's been like around the world lately.
Yeah, my life is around the world lately. I currently am visiting family in New York State in the Catskill Mountains. Beautiful up here.
Okay.
Surrounded by the woods, nature. I went to the lake earlier today. It's the best.
I love it. I love it up there. I grew up split between New England, New Hampshire specifically, and Florida. But I live in Florida. I'm currently in Tampa, Florida, right here in the heart of the city, like actual Tampa, Florida.
New Hampshire is beautiful as well.
New Hampshire is so beautiful.
I love it up there.
I'm actually going to be up there in a couple weeks.
Nice.
There's some things going on up. There's a conference in Connecticut that I want to go to. And of course, I have family up there in the Boston area. And I'm going to kind of use that as a home base for the summer, kind of like a snowbird.
Yeah.
And just go to the events that I'm supposed to go to. And from there, and probably, I don't know, set up a cool studio in a house that I rent on the beach.
Sounds like a good life.
Just manifest, staying in the positive, it's no negativity, and we speak and it will happen. So Sarah, subconscious healing. How long have you been working with people, working with their subconscious? How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so about 10 years, I would say, probably jumping a little more by now, but I would say my whole life at the same time.
Pushing some time in there.
Yeah.
Spent some time in other people's subconscious.
Yes, I have.
That's amazing. And so I imagine that you do a lot of one-on-one sessions. I even saw that you do live coaching, which is something that I don't usually see. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I just want to say to everybody that any of Sarah's links, if you want to contact her, you'll see plenty more of what she has to offer throughout the rest of this episode, but her links will all be in the bio and her contact information that she wishes to share, websites and everything like that.
Thank you.
So Sarah, what have you got coming up? It's summertime. People tend to have plans for the summer. What are some of the events you have coming up? I know you're busy, you're in demand.
Yeah. So I have a big event with Tim Tactic, Sarah Breskman Cosme, and Kadrick Olson. And we're doing a big event in Germany, a global conference. There's going to be almost 300 people there, between 250 to 300 people there in Europe on a spiritual hotspot. So that's going to be incredible. It's the first ever All Shift Happily Now event. And S4 have been running we've been running meditations monthly for about a year now. Jane, the producer of this podcast, was a big part of bringing all of it together. She actually is the one who brought me into All Shift Happily Now. So beautiful. So I'm super excited for that. It's going to be an incredible in-person event. And I also, like you said, the live coaching. I have monthly free Subconscious Freedom group sessions. I actually have one in a few hours. So I bring on people and I just work with. What'd you say?
I said we won't keep you too long.
Yeah. And I work with people live because, even we were talking for a second for everyone listening, like before the show, and he was talking about subconscious work. And we think very much so limiting beliefs and mindset work. And I'm like, my goodness, I want to dive into like sharing a little bit more about what I do and the work that I do, because there's so much more to it. And it's really profound when we really get into those deeper identities to transform our experience of reality. It's mind blowing. So that's
I'm,
why I like
I
to
might
just
have to
do.
open up and have you
Let's
dive into
do
my
it. Oh my
subconscious a
gosh,
little
Tyler,
bit.
let's do it. Because it's one thing to talk about these things, and it's always beautiful. It's inspiring. I love to teach as well. I love to talk as well. So it's beautiful to talk about these things, but it's another thing to experience it and see it happen. You know what I mean?
Amen. And I was really excited to have you on the podcast because I can tell you love to speak and you're really passionate about what you do. And just, I mean, to me, I'm one of those people who makes connections really, really quickly. So when I saw like live coaching, my thought process was not, oh, live coaching, what a cool concept. I mean, yeah, that was like step one, but my brain goes like real quick. And I immediately went to this person is doing something altruistic. Somebody's getting coaching, but they're sharing it live. Other people are going to get benefits out of this.
Yeah, it's
It may not
beautiful.
be 100% personalized. It highlights how much we actually have in common, how many feelings we
Exactly.
beliefs, thoughts, feelings, etc. that we have in common. And something like a live coaching session can actually I just thought that like I said, where I went to in a couple of milliseconds was, wow, that could be really beneficial to like others in a massive way.
Yeah.
Similar to the All Shift Happily Now meditations that you guys are doing. Yeah, I was, back then when you guys started that stuff, I was in the shadows of the quote unquote spiritual community. I'd left my career as an interior designer, and it's close to 4 years ago now. And I was talking a lot to people in the community and collaborating and helping promote events and promote programs and things like that. And, just sharing a lot of information, reading, meditating a lot. I've developed the ability to go into trance states, which I don't channel or anything like that.
It's
I
beautiful.
meditate. My thing is meditation. What really, really, I think gave myself a confirmation from my higher self that I was capable and able to just trust fall into an existence of what's come to be known as light work. I really don't love labels and things like that, but just service to the collective consciousness, being my true self, not serving a system that I don't want to serve for
Hmm.
reasons that I didn't come up with. That
Hmm.
all came about when my meditations went from like, yeah, I meditate every day and I hope to make a little bit more money and be a better salesperson. And that stuff always worked, but it wasn't truth. What really came was when I started meditating with intent, even with like other people just in mind, and believing in the collective, tapping into the collective. And then I started going into these many hour-long trances, and I
That's
realized, oh my God, there are
amazing.
levels to these things. And it's actually a little clip up just recently in the last hour or so on Instagram of me going into trance, because it happens to me very quickly, and I let people who have gifts perform them on me on my show. And like I
Mhm.
recently did a regression session that was filmed. We did a live to discuss it.
Wow.
We haven't shared the video yet, but I'm not against it. But I thought it was 30 minutes or so, if I had to guess. And then went to watch it, and it's 2.5 hours of me in trance, like twirling around, saying crazy stuff.
Super cool.
It's amazing.
Super
And
fun.
then just amazing things. So abilities are within all of us. It's just about
Yeah.
maybe that little switch from 95.5 to 95.9, whatever frequency. It's all about the radio station you're tuned into.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I may or may not, it's kind of 50-50 right now. I may or may not attend that I'll Shift Happily Now in October.
Oh, I
Enough
hope you come. It's gonna be
warning.
so much fun.
I've not ever been to Germany. I would love to go to Germany. Yeah, it would be really awesome to come out there. I actually did speak to Tim a little bit about this before. Of course, I'm not expecting to, just hop on there as somebody who's a part of it. I would like to maybe come out there and not guaranteed or anything, but it'd be cool to come out and do some like live, a little bit of press, maybe a couple podcasts, a couple, get some content, share a little bit with the people who couldn't make it. I think that would be really cool.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll
definitely.
see. So something I wanted to ask you about, real quick. Well, not real quick, but something I kind of wanted to dive into was your subconscious healing, and your method and how you developed. I mean, I'm sure you have. I don't know what it's called. It may be called the Sarah Zula method. Maybe you'll call it something else someday. What is, in a nutshell, what's the secret sauce? What separates what you do from what others do who work with the subconscious? Of course,
Awesome.
that's
Thank you for
something
the
that's emerging.
question. Yeah, thank you for the question. So when it comes to doing subconscious freedom work, I think that the core of what I'm really doing is reminding people of who they are. Right. So at the core of it, what we're doing is we're dissolving the programming, we're dissolving the information we might have learned before we knew better. We're dissolving the things that are limiting us, dissolving the
Okay.
stories that are causing suffering, dissolving the identities we created before we knew better. Maybe something happened in childhood for someone. And because of what happened, maybe let's say someone's dad left. And because their dad left, they had the story that they were abandoned. So then that person, because they created that story in their formative years, they now have had created a subconscious identity of I am a being on this planet who's abandoned.
It's
Now
abandoned.
the thing that happens with that is that once it becomes subconscious, we don't think about it. So then we become this walking conversation, essentially subconscious conversation. We're not aware of it, of a being who is abandoned. So then what that looks like in adult life is someone who might get into a relationship, be over attached, be very fearful that someone's going to leave. And then they see these patterns in their lives where people just keep leaving with a shock. And it like feels like that shock system. And it feels like they can't quite find a balance. And then they're in their adult lives wondering like, what's wrong with me with this? And the
Reliving that
biggest thing
trauma, in a way.
Exactly. And the biggest thing that I share with people is nothing is wrong with you. There's just a programming playing out based on what you learned before you knew better. So what we do with subconscious freedom work and what I specifically do is I reveal the subconscious identities and stories that someone's living in. Because when I work with someone who believes that they're a being who's abandoned, we very quickly dissolve that as the definition of their limitless being, right? We can think about it here of just being in this conversation. I have so much compassion for anyone who's been through that because it's not easy. I'm not saying any of this work is like, okay, I just shift it like that, right? So I have
Of
so much
course, of
compassion for
course.
anyone who's been through that. However, I am sharing this from the mindset and from the vantage point of knowing that freedom's always available. Because as soon as people see, oh, wait, that doesn't have to be the story of who I am as a being, I can go get that little version of me and let it know I'm here now. I love you. Even though this person left, it had nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. And now we can go get that version of us. That energy comes in, is integrated. And when people realize I'm not a being who's abandoned, and I say, okay, what becomes available to you now that you're no longer a being who is abandoned? Every single person, no matter what their story is, they say the same thing. They say, I'm freedom. They say, I'm love. They say, everything becomes available to me. They say, just being me becomes available to me. They say, infinite possibilities. I can go after what I
The
want.
world
So
is the
here's
oyster.
the
It's all
thing.
all
Yeah,
possible.
that's the
Yeah.
thing with this work. What I'm really doing is supporting people in very specific questions. I train people on this. I train coaches on this modality, on these modalities. I have many different modalities to do this work. However, what I'm really doing with people, and this is what I do on these sessions, is we get to the root of who they believe they are unknowingly, right? Who their identity they believe they are in the world. Because our subconscious mind is generating over, I would say, 95% of our experience of reality. And people know this, and then they're like, okay,
We're
well,
well
what I can
aware of
do
it.
with this is I can do subconscious reprogramming, I can do meditation, I can do mindset work. But then what happens if we don't get to the identity and the deeper subconscious stories, who we believe we are to ourselves in the world, if we're not getting to those, the mindset work takes us so far. And what happens, like a rubber band, we snap back. And it's not because we don't snap back there is no going back, and time is all happening now, right? However, people feel like in the reality, this again, oh my good, this is happening again. But what's actually happening is that there's just an identity that's playing out. And if they just ask the right questions, they can reveal that identity and free themselves. So what I like to share with people is it doesn't matter how long something has been a certain way. I promise you freedom is available. And this is why I do this work for free, because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's like, just come into my world, raise your hand on a session. Let's work together. Let's do this. So I don't have to convince you that it's available for you, and we can just do it. Right? We can just do it, and we can start doing this healing work, because it's not to say these things are overnight. I have some clients whose facial features change in front of me because they're no longer living in the weight of their past. They're no longer carrying around that trauma or fear. And I see facial features change in front of me. I have people who have chronic illness, who've had chronic illness their whole lives, who doctors say, oh, this is how you'll manage this, who all of a sudden in under a year are free from any chronic illness. So
Wow.
this is the thing that happens when we're living in identities before we knew better. So this is powerful work. So of course this is reprogramming work, but it's deeper. It's more so like the identity work that I'm really doing with people.
Sarah, everything you just said was so well articulated. What you do is just, I first off want to say what you do is something that you're a pioneer. And I know it feels like a lot of people are doing this kind of work, and a lot of people are offering quantum healing and subconscious healing and things like that. But Sarah, what I know you're doing, and I can tell by the fire and the passion and the way you speak and the energy and of course, I have a prior bit of knowledge of Sarah outside of just speaking to her now in this podcast. What Sarah does is so relatable on so many levels to anybody who's watching this podcast. It doesn't matter if you came here because you wanted to see the next light language guest, or if you came here because you wanted to see a DoD employee whistleblow. We do things across that spectrum. I'm never gonna have a show where it's completely outside of that brand, but we're completely in the realm of truth, self, sovereignty, and disclosure, awakening, but at the same time that rolls right into self-realization. And
yeah, it's why I'm involved in self-love. It's why I'm involved in All Shift Happily Now, right? Sarah Cosby, who's going to be, I see her books back there, amazing books, by the way. But Sarah Cosby, a friend of mine and also a colleague in All Shift Happily Now. These are fantastic books, by the way. They will activate memories. They will activate like an inspiration of that life
Sarah's
is so much more than you know. Yeah. So
we'll give Sarah a special shout out.
Yes.
She's going to be on the show next week. And,
oh, awesome.
Hey,
Good.
what the hell?
Hi, Sarah.
I'll throw a
so
link
what
to
I was
her book
saying,
in the
though,
bio because it does activate people. Sarah is Sarah here, not the author, but you're the third or fourth person to tell me that it activated them.
Yeah, it activates us. It helps us remember.
Oh, okay.
It helps us remember that there's so much more. But I was just saying that the reason that, this does tie into disclosure, the reason that all of this work is so much more connected is because we're all of it, right? We're all a part of this cosmos. We're all a part of this evolution and consciousness that's happening on this planet. And can I keep going?
Oh, I'm fine. I could still hear.
Okay.
I was taking my necklace off.
Okay, cool. So the reason that I wondered at first with All Shift Happily Now, because I'm very much so in this subconscious freedom work, helping people free themselves from identities that are holding them back from living their best experience of this reality, from playing the game in a reality in a way that they're like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm meant for. I've always been meant for this. I always knew there is more. And I kept running against the glass ceiling. I kept feeling like I was repeating the same patterns. So I'm supporting people with these things, but I work so closely with Kadrick, who's a paranormal expert in All Shift Happily Now, with Sarah Cosby, who's a hypnosis expert, who's bringing back all of this information from our lost history. Tim Tactics, who's very much so at a forefront of disclosure. He has over 100 episodes on cosmic disclosure with all of this information. Yeah. So I work so closely with them, and I think Tim says it so beautifully. There's been a lot of programming that's happened on this planet. And what that means is that we've learned who we are as a species. We've learned what's possible for us. We've learned how society should look and work all before we knew better. So this information has been deeply embedded not only in our DNA and our subconscious for thousands of years, but it's time now. We're remembering, we're awakening now. So where I come in is I support people to dissolve the things that no longer serve them. So my
It's
favorite thing about All Shift Happily now is that we all have our own unique genius, and it's all related to just the evolution of human consciousness and coming alive to who we really are. So it's fun to be able to work so closely in that world, and it matches this podcast, Tyler.
is like I am having the most fun in my life doing this podcast, just
That's
meeting
awesome.
people who have, and exactly working with colleagues with whom I just absolutely love and admire and respect and find to be just beautiful people like yourself who are gifted and have open views on everything, on just the new earth, on the state of earth now. And it can range from, things like real world, right in the moment problems like, government disclosure, like Tim Tactics has been involved in, disclosing some of the stuff regarding, ETs and the government, and with his experience in the, in the military and everything like that. And by the way, I'm waiting for you to click my link, man. Like, Tim's supposed to come on the show. I know he's a busy guy, but we'll get Tim on here to have an awesome
He'll be on for sure.
And what's cool, like, yeah, you mentioned that you're working with these people that you just love, and that they're so passionate, and you really feel like you're making an impact. And that's the feeling I'm having. I mean, like, yourself, even I wouldn't think that, wow, I'm getting to interview someone who's doing something so big. I think what you guys are doing right now is an amazing thing, and it's in its infancy, and it's going to grow into a huge movement. And also, another shout out to Jane. I know and that's hence the reason you see me on the camera right now. And she's the
Jane's
producer.
amazing.
She's an amazing person. She's a conduit, a connector, just a
super connector. It is such a genius of hers. She is such a super connector. She's amazing. Beautiful soul.
Just doesn't love to be on the camera. I mean, some people don't love to be on the camera, but that's okay. And that goes to show that there's any way you can find your place in the new earth. You can leave that 3D, that old world, and find your place.
Yeah, I actually worked with Jane about 5 years ago, one-on-one. So a friend of ours who I co-hosted, like I was working with running a mastermind. We were working with someone else who was running a mastermind in LA, an in-person event. And I met him and we were working together. And then he introduced us to Jane. And then I worked with Jane one-on-one years ago. I mean, so many years ago, I worked with her and her husband. And that's why she actually brought me into All Shift Happily now. She introduced me to Sarah. So like, what a beautiful soul. Just what a beautiful soul Jane is. So super shout out to Jane.
Full circle. Jane did a couple of years ago, actually, like I met Jane probably 2 years ago or so, and we became really close really quickly. I mean, Jane's probably the person I speak to the most, but we became very close very quickly. In just a soul family, and what's come to be a host, producer, partner relationship. Partner
so cool.
in podcasting, partner in spreading the word, and partner in like walking into the new earth, etc. It's been great, and we both bring different things to the table. But something that was quite interesting, synchronous, and amazing was, way back when she was actually trying to do all that stuff. She was involved in the movement that you and Kedrick, Tim Tactics, and Sarah Cosme are involved in, the All Shift Happily Now movement. She was, as you know, involved behind the scenes in that.
Oh, she was bringing everyone together. She brought me into it. She brought everyone together. So huge shout out for Jane as being a big instrumental piece of All Shift Happily Now, for sure.
She deserves credit, absolutely. But back then, I was in my spot where I was basically just kind of a guy on Instagram who I'd already left the 3D world. I was a couple years into just spending a few hours a day, sometimes many hours a day in trance state, and doing CE5s and helping people promote their whatever, anything that I thought was good. Did a few podcast spots and things like that. I didn't just come out of nowhere, by the way. I do have a little bit of a past. People who watch the show know that, or just some people just know that. But I did have a little bit of a past in the music industry. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was a professional studio, a session and touring guitar player. I play a lot of instruments, but professional musician. I played with all the biggest rock bands of the late 2000s and early 2010s, and toured all over the country and played in studio all the time, and I was very blessed to do so. I do have that was a chapter. I've lived a life where I've worn many hats. I've stayed so far away from the center, metaphorically speaking. I've lived life right on the edge, so I could see. I say it all the time. You see a lot more from the edge than you do from the center. And I've been blessed to, one, make it through all those different chapters, stay alive, be here to share my story about them, and that's what turned me into what I think is the bridge. Because after having worn 6 or 7 different major hats, there's many different seeds to be planted within many different groups, and quote unquote echo chambers, which the powers that be tend to really be working hard at setting up. The divide and conquer method is alive and well. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. I think it's awesome that you mentioned Kadrick. Actually, I remember seeing Kadrick on TV when I was in my late teens, just talking about. He was talking about like seances or something to that regard. Just for record, I'm 32 years old, so born in the very early 1992. For those who don't know,
I'm 32 too.
So that's my generation. But I remember being a little younger than Kadrick, and if I'm pronouncing his name properly, and actually seeing him on some like fringe documentaries and like early internet stuff that I would watch. And I don't want to say that I was like a fan and I had like posters and stuff, but I remember like thinking, wow, this guy's awesome. Like,
yeah, he is awesome.
I wonder what he's been through. I wonder what he's studied, what he's saying is very insightful, etc. That's just a great example of like, you're working with him now, and I'm experiencing a lot of the same stuff, and it's due to mostly it can be attributed to removing limited beliefs. I've called it ridding attachments. But
what did you call it? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Ridding attachments.
Attachments? Beautiful.
I always say that I'm in a phase of letting go of and ridding attachments, things I'm attached to. It was actually something that came up in my past life regression under trance, was that my lesson is to let go, learn how to let go, learn how to rid attachments, not be so attached, and deeper meaning probably desired there. I'm not sure 100% attached to what.
What do you feel like it's attached to?
Well, there's a lot of things. I get attached to people. I get attached to relationships. I've always either been serially single, or I fall really, really, really hard and put everything into one person. And, that's never so, like I said, I'm only 32. So to do that type of thing when you're young and you just met somebody, I was a younger kid, and, of course, fall for a girl, you just let it take over you. You put everything in the basket, and what happens? It wrecks your perceived existence for the foreseeable future. Actually, my own personal relationship right now with my life partner is the first time I'm mentioning this. We're not officially apart or anything like that, but we're not. We're taking some time to like do separate things right now, and I see it as completely healthy. It's super healthy. We've had a lot go on recently. I've had a lot of life change stuff happen. My mother passed away about 7 weeks ago now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Really close to my mother. My dad was gone when I was 12. So, I've recently found myself like with a little bit of a freeing feeling in the sense of, my parents were a little bit different than me. My dad was really quite a strict person. And then on the other hand, my mom was not so strict. She kind of let me do whatever she wanted, but she was very much, she even said things like, please don't start going on TV again, which she meant like from back when I was younger, 10, 12 years ago, doing music videos and interviews and things like that. She was sick, and she passed away, but she was telling me, please don't publish a book. Please don't start going on TV again. Please don't start spilling things while I'm, here. And in divine timing, that didn't happen. Right in the time that everything came together, I mean, her time had come, and and by the way, I want to say I'm not complaining. She fought so long. She beat the odds. Lori, she was a fighter, a
Amazing
lioness.
woman.
She made it 100 times longer than they expected her to. It was absolutely amazing that we had so much extra time with her. So that's the way I choose to look at things. Just, things like that. Those are attachments that I'm being forced to rid right now. I
Not
I
easy in
can't
those
call,
moments.
a little bit of a mama's boy here, but I can't call mama up and ask her a question anymore. Not whining, just saying I see it now, whereas as a lesson, whereas maybe 5 years ago I wouldn't have seen it as a lesson.
Yeah, powerful perspective. And
I would
you
have
just
played.
sharing this is going to be super helpful for people who are going through a similar experience, because
I think
dealing with the
so.
crossing of a loved one is a very big thing that we go through in the human existence. So thank you for opening up and sharing your experience.
100%. I mean, people have, if I had heard that at certain times, I'm a little too familiar with loss, and it's not too familiar. Maybe that's a part of my journey to experience loss. And apparently, what I keep being told under hypnosis and in trance and stuff is to rid attachments. And
Yeah.
it's
Would you like to
it's
talk about that a little bit
it's
today?
kind of becoming quite clear what that means to rid attachments, because the universe is forcing attachments to be broken,
Yeah. And what is your perspective
boundaries to
on it
be drawn.
now? What have you learned about it at this point that's supporting you? Because you're a master at experiencing it for sure, because you've had these experiences. So at this point, what have you learned about letting go of these attachments?
So just a little bit of background. I mean, the attachments I've had in the past that were big, I did not let go of healthily at all. And the consequences were deep, and I'll keep this short because I want to focus on the now. But, ran roughly, age 16 to 22, 23. I'm living that man's, a guy that age is, I was going to college, well, high school, then college. I went to the University of North Florida. I was going back and forth to Los Angeles or other, wherever, pretty much most weekends to record. And, where the recording industry is very lucrative with all the top acts in the rock industry. It was a great time.
Super cool.
If they like you, if they like your music, if they like your style, then of course they'll invite you on tour. And yeah, that's fun
awesome.
too. So I did that for a really long time, and I got, some offers, towards the end of that period. I mentioned 22, 23, that, were kind of precipices in the road, big forks in life. Like, what are you going to do? I did see some kind of dark things. Some of the things I've talked about this before. Some of the things you hear about, it's not really anything that's a secret. I mean, we've all heard about some of the dark things that happen in Hollywood, in the back rooms when you go to a certain mansion, and with 21 bedrooms, there's a lot of weird stuff happening in certain bedrooms.